But we
haven't got
really
that much
appreciate
to
your meeting us here, Tim, because you're a walking history book in the village.
Yeah.
What, do you want to, we'll switch off a little bit?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so, when were you born, Tom?
October 2nd, 1943.
Just so you know, this is Tom Pellett.
75 you are.
I'm 73.
73, okay.
I'm supposed to ask
I was born on my dad's birthday. I was born on my dad's 40th birthday.
What was your dad's name?
Thomas Frederick Pellett Sr.
Okay, good.
He was named after his two great-grandfathers, Thomas Pellett, who the road's named after,
Oh,
and Frederick Bissell, who, now the Bissells were originally from Bergen, New York. But anyway, my grandmother named my dad, and so, of course, being born on his birthday,
That's really
his 40th birthday, I was tagged with Junior. And it was funny. He passed away in January, and it was the following October. Part of the way through the day, I said, "Oh my gosh, this is the first time I've ever had my birthday on my own."
oh wow, yes.
You know, all
Wow.
kinds of pictures of us around with both of us with the cake and stuff. But anyway, so that's where that whole
Were you
thing
were you the youngest of your siblings? Or,
Yes, I had a sister that was 14 years older than me, and there were no other kids in between.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was actually more like a grandmother to my kids than an aunt, you know, because of the difference. But yeah,
Wow.
that was, yeah. So,
so how long have you lived in Webster?
well, obviously, well, I was born here, and up until 1966, when I got married, my wife and I lived over in Greece in an apartment from June of '66 to about May of '69. And we moved into the house where we are now down on Jamaica Road. And so I basically, with the exception of those 3 years, I've been in Webster all my life.
Where was the house you were born in?
On Kircher Park, 76 Kircher Park.
Okay.
Part of the way down the hill. If you go down, going north on Kircher Park, of course, when we were growing up, it went all the way through to May Street, obviously.
Right.
And there was a vacant lot about halfway down. Our house was right across the street from that.
Okay.
So my parents built that house in the later 1920s, I think. They had lived before that with my grandparents, my mother's parents, who lived at 100 Kircher Park.
Really?
And that house is, if you go down before you make the bend to go over to Baker Street, that's the last house on the
Yes.
west side.
Yes.
You lived right next door to it, didn't you?
I lived. No,
Yeah.
I lived on Baker. Yeah.
Yeah,
The last house on the left side. So it's the White House with the.
Yeah.
yeah, big,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, because we lived
Right.
across. We lived at
That's
109.
right.
So.
yeah.
Wake up.
So, yeah, that's,
So you went from. So you grew up on Baker, and then you
no,
grew up on
Kircher.
Kircher.
Kircher,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
yeah. And that was a good time. I've often said, I can't imagine living someplace else and growing up in any other time period than what I did, because it was just great. I think that's why I've got so much interest here with the museum and
Just a
everything
little
like
town,
that.
little tiny hamlet then, wasn't it?
Well, was there 3,000 people then, right, in the village?
Yeah, maybe in the village,
Yeah.
I really don't know. I would imagine
Okay.
probably somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the town was much smaller. right?
Oh yeah, sure. And going to West Webster was like going on an overnight camping trip or something, you know. I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
driving.
Was it?
Well, I mean,
5 miles.
we did
you know.
we did everything walking and stuff around. My mother didn't drive. My dad worked in the city, so whenever we shopped and stuff like that, it was always we walked uptown, went to the different stores that we wanted to go to, and so on and so forth. And then later, once I was old enough to ride a bicycle, and then it was bicycle. But we were always basically in the village. You didn't need to go anyplace else
Okay.
back then, you know, really.
How about school? Where'd you start?
Spent my whole time in Spry, what's now Spry. That was, that was the only school. And actually, when I was in there, it was with initially with what we would call preschool now. They had, what did they call it? Reading? I can't think what it was now. Back then, the school library and the Webster library, town library, were one. And they were on the second floor at Spry. And there was a lady that was the librarian, her name was Miss Chinung. And she used to have, there was kind of like a back area, work area behind the stacks and stuff. And she would have this preschool type thing.
Huh.
She would read books. We'd play things like Duck, Duck, Goose and stuff like that. You know, all the preschool stuff that you do and everything like that. So, first grade, I was across the street in what's now the apartments. It was the Masonic Temple back then. And ironically, the schools grew so much and everything. I was back in the same room when I was a senior for driver ed.
Oh, my God.
Really?
But, yeah, in the middle, what was it? Well, late 50s, they started going more with the elementary schools, and that took the grade schools away from there, and like Ridgecrest.
Right.
My dad was the first custodian at Ridgecrest, actually, way back when. But even so, when I graduated in '61, they were still 2 years away from RL, and it was packed in there. I mean, you just could barely move in the hallways to get from class to class.
So you graduated, so when you graduated from Spry.
Well, Webster High School.
Well, right, but okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So also for you, elementary school was actually in the apartment building where the old, is that right? Or was it?
No, they used that. They leased the bottom floor from the Masonic Lodge to use
Okay.
for classrooms. Like I say, I was over there for first grade. I think there were maybe 3 first grades or something like that at the
Okay.
time. And we were pretty much in that building. Then later on, when I was up in my senior high school days, that one classroom, as I say, I went back there for driver ed, and that was where they held the business classes too, like business law and personal typing and, you know, all
Okay.
the secretarial type stuff and like that. So they were still leasing rooms from there.
So it's interesting. So that was the original. They were the original school.
Yes.
They
Yep.
the Masonic Temple bought it, and then they
Yep.
leased the rooms back from the Masonic Temple.
Well, they built Spry, and well, I keep calling it Spry. They built the high school in
Right.
was something like 1928 or something like that. Or
Okay.
just before that, because that's about the time that the lodge bought the building once they moved out.
Okay.
So-
Was the academy still in operation on Corning Park?
I don't recall that. It might have been. It was not something I was aware of. I had an aunt and uncle that lived on Corning Park, so we were up that way quite often. But I don't remember. I just remember it as the old Corning house, and I think it was pretty much apartments and rooms and stuff like that. Yeah, at that point.
Where did they hold the graduation ceremony?
In the gym.
In the gym. Is the gym about where it is now?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
They, let me see, when I was in about third grade, so that would be what, early 50s, is when they put the 2 extensions
Right.
on. And one side was all classrooms and one side was gymnasium and cafeteria and all that stuff. So that's where there were, I mean, there were, I don't know how many they put out graduation-wise classes these days. We had something like, I believe, 260 people or something in our class.
It's a lot bigger now.
It wasn't too bad to try and handle it in the gym, you know.
So what did you do for lunch before they had? Because obviously you must have been there before they had a cafeteria. How did you eat? What did you do? Eat lunch?
I carried my lunch most of the time, brown bagged it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you walk to school?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like Bill Cosby says, uphill both ways, you know.
2 miles.
There was in later years when we got up into our higher classes and stuff. There were a couple of the mothers on our street that would drive us to school if it was crazy winter weather. But no, for the most part, we walked.
Yeah.
I would walk up. Well, there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood that we all grew up with. We really, I didn't have any reason to leave the Kircher Park area because there were a whole bunch of kids. We were all about the same age. We rode bikes together. The last house on Kircher Park on the east side was Bill Wright, the barber, and they had a pool in the backyard.
Still there.
And so we'd be down there swimming and riding bikes around and just playing baseball, doing all the stuff you would expect, right there in our neighborhood, because we really didn't have any reason to go beyond that too much.
Where were you born? Were you born in the village?
Well, I was born actually in the old Rochester General Hospital, which used to be on West Main Street, over by Nick Tahoe's, across the street from Nick Tahoe's. That,
Okay.
of course, got torn down and everything
Right.
went into RGH on Portland Avenue. But I was born there, but grew up on Kircher Park. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I say, well, from 43 till, I was there from 1943 until the summer of 1966.
Okay. So we have one of our questions we've asked people is what do you think's changed? How do you think Webster's changed? Like, or what are your fondest? What are the things you miss the most? And like, it's hard to keep those things separated. So, and you were a building inspector too, so you have a whole different perception.
Well,
You saw it. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, an inspector for the town was one thing. I think I'm more aware of it because of working with the museum and stuff and being in the village more, How has it changed? Oh, I mean, we could take another 2 hours and talk about that. I mean, when I was growing up, like I said, my mother didn't drive, so we would come up to the village, and there were no superstores or big boxes or supermarkets and like that, There were specific people that my mother liked to trade with, and those were the stores that we went to. They were small. It was a small grocery store, King's Meat Market, Hart's occasionally. A&P, of course, had a store down here on the east side of Main Street. I don't remember going in there too often, but there were just certain people. Hawley's Hardware, we would go in there because he was the collector of bills for the telephone company and I think RG&E.
Oh, okay.
So when we would go in there, I always laugh about that. I've told people this story a million times. When I was a little kid, I would go in there with my mother, and his office was in the back of the store. And he had a stuffed moose head up on the wall. And I remember as a little kid, that thing used to scare the devil out of me. I always wanted to go over to the bank and see if the rest of the moose was over there.
That's good.
There was a Western Union store on the Four Corners, and that's where my dad knew the owner of that real well, and we used to fish a lot when I was a kid, and that's where we would get a lot of our fishing gear. But that's where my bicycles came from, and things like that.
Where
The
did you?
Holly Hardware.
Pardon?
The Holly Hardware you're talking about.
No, this was Western, called Western Auto.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know what they've evolved into.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember shopping for. Well, of course, again, I was with my mother. My dad might have bought a bunch of stuff from Holly's or something like that. But
Where did you and your dad fish? Did you guys would you go up to the lake, the bay, or?
well, usually we would go down to like 9 Mile Point or maybe Webster Park on the pier.
Okay.
A lot of times we take a Saturday and go down to Sodas Bay and rent a boat and just go out with there. And then every summer, another kind of is getting away from what we're talking about here, but my mother and dad started back in the 30s going up to Crane Point State Park in the Thousand Islands. And there's an area there, it's kind of like a peninsula that sticks out and separates the St. Lawrence River from Goose Bay. And on the riverside, there were 3 small islands there. And trolling in between those islands, my dad caught a northern pike one year. And to give you a little bit of an idea, I was about maybe 7 or 8 or 9 years old. And my sister is standing holding the fish, whose head is even with the top of my head, and the tail
Oh
is on
my
the ground.
gosh.
Thing was a monster. Every year from that point on, last week in July, first week in August, we were up to the Thousand Islands and we were trolling that same. He fished for 40 some years after that for this fish's bigger brother, never found him.
That's neat. So you guys, did you guys take Lake Road to get up there? How did you?
To get to the islands?
Yes. What did you do?
Well, Ridge Road.
Okay,
You
so you
take
took Ridge
Ridge
Road?
Road up to like Mexico or somewhere
Yeah,
around there.
okay.
And then Route 3 up along the edge of the lake, up through Watertown, and then
Okay.
on up from there.
Okay.
But see, you have to remember one thing with, well, and I used to hunt too. I don't hunt anymore. I haven't in years, simply because I got used to being outdoors without hunting when I was a Boy Scout and like that, you know. But as I mentioned to you, my dad, I was born on my dad's 40th birthday. Dad was born in 1903. So when he was growing up on the farm down on Pellett Road, he was still putting food on the table. So hunting was a necessity, so to speak, back then. He thought nothing of having, he's told me different times of having a couple of rabbits and a couple of pheasants hanging in the cellar of the house and stuff like that, you know.
Where was now? You live on Pellett. You live on.
I live on Shoemaker.
You live on Shoemaker.
Yeah, and Pellett Road is right down around the corner from there.
And where was the farm that was on Pellett?
If you're going north on Pellett Road, you go down the hill and there's Shangri-La that goes
Yep.
off, goes back to the Kiwanis Lodge.
Yes.
As you come up the other side, there's a little white Cape Cod type house. That was my grandparents' home.
On the east side?
And then on the east side.
East side.
Then further down on the west side, the last house before you get to the big woods was my great-grandfather's house, Thomas.
Oh wow. Okay.
In fact,
Is it the big red one now?
Pardon?
Is it a big red
no,
sprawling?
you're on the wrong side. You gotta go on the
The
west
west
side,
side.
west side of the road. In fact, we took the big woods trail from the parks thing there, you
Yeah.
know, a while back, and it was interesting to me when we got down to the north end of that. I was actually hiking on my great grandfather's old property,
Yeah.
which was kind
That's
of
neat.
neat, especially with all that old growth stuff back there. But yeah, so they lived down there. My grandfather unfortunately passed away from pneumonia in the middle 20s. My dad's mother was the only one of my 3 grandparents that I ever knew. My mother's father had passed away. I was born in October. He had passed away the previous January. As I say, my dad's father died of pneumonia in around 1925, I think, somewhere around there. And my grandmother passed away in the fall of when I was a senior in high school, so it was
Yeah.
September, October of 1960. So she was really the only one that I ever knew.
You said your dad worked in the city.
He worked, back when we were talking about growing up and stuff, he worked for a company by the name of Schlegel Manufacturing. They were down right in the area of Goodman and College Avenue there, now down by the Village Gate.
Oh, okay.
In fact, the old building is now condos and stuff like that, I think.
Really?
So,
Huh.
yeah, he worked there. Later on, he worked for Delco over in the west side of the city. And circumstances ended up like in 57, 58, somewhere around there, that he got laid off from there. It was a union shop and, you know, last guy in, first guy out kind of thing. And so he went up and talked to R.L. Thomas. They were good friends. And so R.L. set it up that he would take over Ridgecrest Elementary when that opened.
Oh, wow.
And he worked there until he retired when he was, I don't know, about 67, somewhere around there.
Wow.
So, yeah, he only had grade school education. Again, because my grandfather had passed away and the guys had to do their thing,
Yeah.
you know. When he went to school, in a little one-room schoolhouse in the corner of Clem Road and Benalstein.
Wow.
So, yeah, he used to drive a horse and buggy to school and
Okay.
sleigh in the wintertime and everything, yeah.
So
Yeah.
were there any big events that went on in the town when you were little that you can remember? Like things that would stick in your
Carnival,
carnival? Okay.
Fireman's Carnival, probably that was about the biggest event that,
Okay. Any news stories that you remember?
pardon?
Any news stories of people doing strange things in the town, or?
We had a few strange people in town.
There you is?
The jungle.
I don't, I can't think of any,
Okay.
anything significant that
What
way.
about the jungle?
Well, you know, that was interesting because I was reading that article that was in the Herald a few weeks back, and see, we always referred to the jungle as pretty much Kittleberger Park,
Okay.
and not the whole street. It was, when you got back to the backside, it was a fairly heavily wooded area, and
Yes.
there was probably a half a dozen houses back there. And that's when they got down into the Orchard Street thing and like that. I guess I never really thought of that as the jungle, not me personally. We were in an area, of course, where we were in Kircher Park. I talked about hunting. You certainly wouldn't want to try this today, but we used to come out the front door of the house with a shotgun over our shoulder, walk right down the street.
Green right down Kircher to May?
Yeah, right down Kircher to May, cut through behind. You talked about Barry Swift earlier. Fred, his father, had the well drilling business where Jimmy Smith's collision shop is now. And I don't remember if the block building, that was originally Baker Lightning Protection. I don't remember if they were there or not. But anyway, we could cut in between those two buildings, get on the railroad tracks, and just start walking east. And because once you got past Phillips Road, there was nothing but farm fields. And so we could, and actually the town highway department had a building down there at that point in time too. Be right about where 104 crosses Phillips now.
Okay.
You know where the railroad tracks
Yep,
used to go through
absolutely,
there. So
yep.
down in that area and like that.
Do you remember the railroad? Do you remember the train coming through?
Oh yeah,
You do?
yep, very
Okay.
much so, yep.
All right.
In fact, in my early teens, we all got the bug with go-karts. And, well, in fact, we always called it the cement strip. It's that cement paving that goes from North Avenue back to,
Yep.
right along the edge of the tracks
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Of
Looks like
course,
a rope. It's
where the
not.
restaurant was and
Yes.
all that. Now, that was, when you got down in there, I don't know if you guys remember or not, but when the Lou's Caboose was open, they had one area they called the boiler room,
Yep.
a
Right.
special dining area. That was actually the boiler room for Lefroy's pickle factory. So it was a legitimate boiler room, and they tore the whole factory down and built everything around
Yeah,
it. But
I
anyway,
remember that well.
that strip was there primarily for them to be able to transport back and forth. There were dirt roads where Kircher Park and May Street came together. There was a dirt road that wound back there. And we used to ride the go-karts on that. And then we get down on that concrete stretch down there, and when the train's coming into town from the east, we'd race them down to the North Avenue. And when he'd come back again, he'd tell us how fast, the engineer would tell us how fast we were going, so.
Oh,
I
fun.
remember the trains very well, yeah.
Okay.
I
Fun.
can remember, something I know I spoke to you guys about when we were talking with the freight building and everything like that. I can remember going to that freight building and my dad having ordered something, picked it up and put it in the car from there and, got down. And when we got into the kit houses in here, the museum a while back too, one of them that we were looking at it actually came in on a box car, a flat car or something to the station. And then they had to go and get the pieces to put their house together. But yeah, I don't remember too much of steam, but most everything was diesel by the time that I was there. And of course, you had Masons and Whitmers down there, so the railroad was bringing in coal and stuff for them. We had coal in our house. We burned coal in our house until I was, well, it was after I moved out that my dad converted the old coal-burning octopus, we called it, downstairs, the
Yeah.
central thing with all
Yeah.
these things coming out of it. Put a gas conversion thing into that. But,
So who did you hang out with? You talked about your friends and the
Yeah,
go-karts, and
yeah,
so
we
do
had-
you have any name dropping here that you can do? Who did you hang out with?
There was, just on Kircher Park, just south of me were two brothers. One was a couple years older than me, and the other one was a couple years younger. 2 doors north of me, 3 kids there, again, the same age range. My grandparents' old home, there were two kids there. Rick Walders and his 2 brothers were down the street farther. The Wrights, where we went swimming, there was, well, Gordy is still a barber here in town, up in West Webster. His older brother Bill was a barber in Ontario, and so that group was around. There was probably a dozen of us or so that were all within a couple, 3 years of each other.
Okay.
So,
So when you left the village going west, was there I'm assuming, I don't know because I wasn't there, but how was it till you got to West Webster? Was it pretty open?
yeah, yeah.
What was West Webster like at the time?
I don't recall. We
Okay.
really didn't get up there that
Really?
often.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. Everything used to end pretty much right where, what's the appliance store called now? The Netzman's,
Orville's, I think.
Orville's. That building was originally, that was the big thing. The Hart's Market people and Red and White sold out the Star, and they built that building up there, and oh my God, it was like, they're going out of town. I mean, it sounded like they'd moved over to Greece someplace or something. I mean, that's the scope of the travel patterns at that
Wow.
time. It actually became an issue where my mother couldn't shop there anymore because it was too far to walk.
Okay.
You know, so, but of course, Joe Bash, and I'm getting away from what you were talking
That's
about,
right.
but Joe Bash had a small market that is where the old Netzman store is on Main Street here. Before they tore it down, he built what they call the Market Basket, which was over here in the same block as where Prime was. His Utz's Bakery was in that same section, and where Streppa's was, the restaurant there, that was the American Legion Hall at the time. So that was that whole stretch of buildings in there. And when the Market Basket opened, that was like, oh my God. I mean, it's like one little corner. You probably couldn't take the produce section of Wegmans and put it in that building now.
Okay.
But it still had everything. So that was pretty much where we shopped from that point on. But Bash's old store, it's like the old pictures you see. You walk in and there'd be a big wheel of cheese with a glass cover
Yeah,
over the
yeah.
top of it, you know. A ball of string
Yeah.
up and the rafters hanging out, so after
Yeah.
they got done wrapping the stuff up, they grabbed the string and break it off, you know, and like that. So yeah, that was pretty cool. That was this, again, certain ones that we used to go to. But once Star built out there, it was still, well, when did the town hall get built? Town hall got built in the late 50s,
Right.
and it was still pretty open around there at that point in time. Garnham's Dairy, of course, and then later
Right.
Hagedorn's, that
Right.
was there, but it was pretty open all the way up through farmlands, you know,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So when you graduated, what did you do? I mean, I don't know actually. I don't know how you ended up being what you were.
Well, it's kind of a strange story, but it started in high school. I took a lot of art courses and stuff like that. I wanted to take a course down in the shop area, the industrial arts area, about small engine maintenance. Because I was starting to get interested in cars and the go-karts and stuff like that. Well, this other guy and I went in there, and it turned out that we couldn't take that class because we didn't have basic shop. You had to have that before you
Yep.
could take anything else. And Mr. Unclus, that was the shop teacher at the time, who was a good friend of my dad's, said, Tommy says, I don't know why they let you come down here. They never should have, saved. Well, anyway, I go back up to the guidance counselor, and we end up discovering that mechanical drawing is right next to my regular art class. So this is perfect. The school's too crowded. I don't have to move out of this one room for at least 2 periods,
Yeah, that's good.
And I don't need a pile of books to go there. Anyway, I discovered that I really liked that.
Okay.
I knew that I wasn't going to have an art career because I wasn't quite good enough and quite fast enough to make a living out of it. And so I kind of set my sights going to RIT nights and stuff like that on machine and tool design. Back then they were still drawing everything, nowadays it's all computer. But the long story short of that, I got the old routine. We can't hire you because you don't have any experience. If you don't hire me, I'm not going to get experience.
Yeah, right.
Same
So
story now. Same thing
just for to get time on the board, I took a job with a kitchen remodeling firm that at that time was on Dewey Avenue right across from Aquinas. And all of a sudden, hey, this is kind of fun, working with the cabinetry and working with windows and 2x4s and stuff like that. And I didn't have to do a page and a half of trig before I started the drawing.
Mm-hmm.
So I really kind of liked that, and then there was an opportunity that came along, actually 2 jobs simultaneously, one with a residential home designer, the other with an architectural firm downtown. And I opted for that, discovered I liked that, went through the whole thing. I had to do almost 12 years of internship before I was eligible to take my state exams for my
Wow.
architect's license. Well, if you have a degree in architecture, you can take it after 8 years, and they count the time you were in school. So if you come out with a Bachelor of Architecture, you put, School of Architecture is typically 5 years long. So you come out from that, work 3, and then be able to take the exams. If you didn't have the degree, then it was 12 years.
Wow.
So anyway, long story short, ended up taking my exams and luckily passing them the first time. And that's how the architecture thing came in. And then,
Okay.
as you mentioned, in the middle 1990s, opportunities worked around too. I'd always been interested in building codes and like that, and then to come to the town and, as you know, retired out of there after, 14 and a half years
Yeah.
or whatever.
So you came to the town through an architectural side, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
In fact, they had to do kind of a waiver a little bit because of the job description
Mm-hmm.
between that and the civil service exam.
Wow.
Yeah, so,
That's neat.
anyway,
But so when but you got to see the town, and you got to see the town as a building inspector in the '90s when it was also growing really.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So yeah. Okay.
I remember the first day, or first couple of weeks or so I was on the job, I'd get my clerk, who was just a wonderful lady, had been there for a number of years,
What was her name?
Patty DePerna.
Oh, I know. Okay.
Remember her?
Mm-hmm.
She would set up the list every day of where I had to go for inspections and like that. And picked up the list a couple of times, and I said, you know what? I have no idea where these roads are. There's not that's supposed to be somebody's farm. There's no road there. And I get down there and there'd be like a dozen houses, So
It's pretty funny.
that took a while. Yeah, it was interesting when I first came on there. But yeah, I had 1 year, I've forgotten exactly what year it was now, that I inspected over 300 homes.
That's like one a day.
And you gotta remember, when you do an inspection on a home, there's probably at least 5 inspections.
Yeah.
So each one of those over 300 a year, that's 1,500
Yeah.
inspections just on those houses.
Right.
Not with anything
Yeah,
else. And
yeah.
that was kind of a trying time, I'll tell you. And then it was shortly after that they hired an assistant for me. And of course, Rod took over when I retired and like that. But yeah, I saw a lot growing. A lot of, I was there for pretty much, Wegmans was already going on Holt Road, but all the stuff across the street, I was there for all of that. When it was just a standalone Kohl's before they put the rest of the stuff in. So, yeah, we went through most of that.
So you were down there when it wasn't even developed, right?
Right.
Yeah, because I remember walking down there
You had
too.
one house
That was
back
kind of
there.
conservation board. I had to go down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was very different.
Yeah.
Boy, yeah. So,
So do you remember the expressway coming through?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. For the most part. It's interesting you were talking about going up to Thousand Islands. It used to be that we would come up Kircher Park, go down Ridge Road, and when you got down to Union Hill,
Mm-hmm.
you made the drop down onto 104A. And that is now, of course, 104. The road didn't exist because the bridge wasn't there yet. The road existed from there, oh gosh, quite a ways over in the state. I think it still took us to probably at least to Sodus, because I can still recall driving through Sodus and like that. But that was the kind of like the super highway kind of thing.
Okay.
Then, of course, eventually the bridge came along and they made the connection, and now it goes, I don't know how far, you know.
Like Lewiston or something, right? So.
But yeah, that was,
How about any village government people, like mayors or
oh
village
gosh.
boards or zoning people?
Yeah,
planning board?
well, we talked about Mayor Hawley. He was the one that was around pretty much when I
Yeah.
was growing up. I mean, he was mayor from what, the 1930s to,
1960s.
Middle 60s.
Yes.
you know, or early 60s. Milt Case, who was the druggist, of course, over here on the corner of Lapham and Main Street. He was mayor at one time. I knew him. He lived down our street. Always a cute story with him. I had the Times Union paper route for Kircher Park, and he always used to bring a paper home from work with him, from the drugstore. But if there was a contest going on, you'd go over to Mr. Casey, we got okay, sign me up. He'd sign up for like about a month or so I could get the credit to maybe win one of these contests
Oh,
or something.
yeah.
And then we'd just drop it off and he'd start bringing it back home again. But, you know what I don't remember too much about, early on at least anyway, is village board members.
That's okay.
Bob Harloff, of course, sat there, and it was later mayor and stuff like that. And Bob, what was his name, the jeweler?
John.
Oh, yeah.
John.
Johnville, Bob Johnville. I know Howie Middleton was a village board member at one time, and he used to run what was Howie Steiner, where Golden Boys is now. And he also had a clothing store over here on the south side of East Main. I think it's where Chip Arnold moved out of,
Okay.
because there was Cases on the corner, and it was Wally's. That was a last name, Wahle apostrophe S, haberdashery, and then Hawley's Hardware, then the bank, and Howie bought that clothing store from Wally and continued that, and I got out of the restaurant business and stuff like that. But I remember him.
So the Golden Boys been there since I've been coming to the village, but I remember it being in a house. It was the restaurant in the front was an extension of a big house that was there.
Well, it burned down.
Yeah, it burned down. And So before that, so it's always been a restaurant there.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
do you
I washed
remember?
dishes there when I was in,
Did you?
when I was like a sophomore and junior and like that. It was pretty much the only difference in it. Well, different layout and stuff
Different
a little
layout.
bit, but when you went in the front door, you walked in part of the way and then
Up the
stepped up
steps.
Yep.
and then went around the sides like that. The pickup window now, that was closed off, and that's where we were back in there doing the dishes and all that other kind of stuff. So I don't remember it being a lot of house-like type of thing. It was pretty much that type of structure. And then there was the alleyway, and then of course next to that was a movie theater. So
Where did you go when you were sick? You went, or your family, for that matter. Where did I mean?
Well,
because like if you
we-
got ill,
our
did you have to go all the way to the city, or you just?
no. As a matter of fact, when I was younger, we had a doctor by the name of Michael Lynch, and he was over here on the south side of East Main Street, probably a couple doors east of where the old Burger King thing, where the mac and cheese place was and like that. He was there. And so we would go there, but he also made house calls.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I
Which-
remember
yeah.
those.
And we were sick, and you know, you'd see his car pull up out in front, and I can remember he kind of walked with a sideways gait like this, you know, and like that medical bag was weighing a ton. And you can remember the ominous steps coming up the stairs of the house, you know. But yeah, and then I don't remember whether I think he eventually retired. He died later on, obviously, but at that point in time, we then switched to Dr. Jenkins, who was up on South Avenue, where Dick Prinzing lives now,
Oh, okay.
right across from the end of Sanford Street.
Okay.
That part on the north side was the doctor's office. He sold out to Jason Cook, and Cook had his office in the back of his house, farther up South Avenue. And then he was one of the doctors that went into the medical center down at Barrett Drive. But when I was younger, yeah, we would go to Lynch's office for whatever. And like I say, all the doctors back then made house calls.
So what did you do to have fun when you were younger? There was obviously a movie theater, but did you guys do anything? What did you do? I mean, you go-karts and that kind of thing, but
Oh yeah, we played baseball. I can remember many a night playing tag after dark when I was finally allowed to go out of the house after supper. And just again, you got to remember, we got this core in the neighborhood there, right there in the neighborhood, and so we had enough for a couple of ball teams, and we'd
Would
play
you-
across the backyards.
oh, okay, right.
And then, in the winter, Kircher Park, sledding down the hill.
You sled down that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'd go up and catch the sidewalk up next to the Grange Hall, and down you go. I remember one time there was an ice storm. Not major one like we had in the early 90s here, but it was pretty bad. And the village was kind of shut down, and our street was all ice. And you could get up at the top of the hill, and we had a good enough start, you could make it all the way to May Street on this.
Really? Oh my gosh.
And of
Oh
course,
my
if it
God.
got too tight, there were curbs on either side, so you'd kind of
That's right. You
ricochet
can bounce
off
off
and
the
keep
side.
going.
Yep.
But the big thing we talked about with Market Basket and Utz's and the Legion Hall, behind them was that big open paved area that was a skating rink in the summer, or in the winter, and the wooded area between that and Kircher Park at the bottom of the hill was a summer playground where they had swing sets and push around merry-go-round, sandbox-like type things. They used to open up the lower level of the Grange Hall, and you could go up there and do crafts and stuff like that.
Oh. Okay.
And then,
Recreational type thing.
yeah, it was, I think, gosh, I'd have to think the village or somebody put it together. used to make the plaster of Paris molds.
Sure.
You remember those things? The
I
rubber molds, you fill them up and then you strip the thing off and paint them. And
Oh, yes.
Uncle Sam's
Yeah.
and Christmas trees and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And in the wintertime, like I say, the paved area was a skating rink. And
Did you skate?
yeah, oh yeah,
No, okay.
yeah. Boy, I wouldn't want to get on a pier now. I'd probably kill myself.
I've
But
thought of it, but I'm not gonna do it either. I used to love to skate.
it was kind of interesting because I had one young lady that I was kind of fond of that was an excellent ice skater. And when I'd get up, my ankles would go just like that. And we had actually a drainage ditch between our house and the neighbors to the south, and that would freeze over. And so we would. That's where I learned to ice skate. Was on this little narrow strip with ski poles.
Really?
Falling over till I figured out I could stand up enough to be able to dare going up to that rink and like that. And then, later on, yeah, we used to play hockey up there.
Really?
From one end to the other, and it was kind of cool because when you came out of the Legion Hall, there was a grassy area, and then off to one side there were steps that went down to that rink. Big high retaining wall around
Yep.
the one whole side of it. And it came in handy when Sawyer's Bowling Hall burned down. The fire trucks were able to pull right back in there and squirt water on the thing from the back as I slept through the whole thing. But anyway, down underneath, it was originally intended to be like a storage room or something, but they had a wood stove in there. And you could go in and change your skates and stuff in there and warm up and then come out. We, in my later teens, we took on the scout trooper, the explorer post that I was with, took on flooding that at night after the skating was over with. And then they kind of dropped away from that, and myself and a couple of other guys used to do that. Once the skating got over, usually around 9 o'clock at night or so, we'd sweep or shovel the whole thing off, and there was a hydrant up at the top. Stretch the hose out, bring the hose down, coat it with water, roll the hose up, make sure all the water was out of it again, turn the lights out, go up to the candy kitchen, and sit
There you
up there
go.
for a while,
Okay.
and then head on home, just check, make sure everything was okay there, and take care of it that way. So yeah, when the weather was it used to be a lot of fun. I mean, it just seemed like that thing. I'm sure it really wasn't, but it seemed like an awful big area, And we used to play ball on that in the summer.
Actually, it was a pretty big area.
So
just
yeah,
so you know.
yeah,
So,
yeah, it really was. Lynn Barton, the historian, has a good time of showing a picture of me on the front page of the Webster Herald at 3 years old, beating on the big bass drum to open that skating rink.
Oh.
So, anyway, yeah, that was it. Well, of course, then later on, the sports teams and stuff. When I graduated from high school in '61, we had probably the best string of athletes. In fact, the basketball team from that era has been noted as being probably the best of several decades from 1961. I remember we played Franklin High School at the War Memorial and set a new attendance record while we were there.
Wow.
For the title, yeah. And that was, but we were undefeated in football that year, and the baseball team and the track team did real well. And so that was the other thing. Friday nights, if there wasn't a basketball game up at Spry, we'd go to the movies. If there was a basketball game, we'd go to the game.
But but pretty much you could do everything you needed to do in a
Everything
very
I
small
needed
area.
to do right here in the village.
Okay.
Yeah. Even scouts.
Also, I was going to ask you, what scout troop were you? I'm sorry, that's what
108.
Okay, where did
And
they meet?
of course, they've got the building right up there on the edge of the fireman's field and like that. So that at that time, that was jump on the bike and go to scouts.
So you went to there were firemen's carnivals when you were little.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they've been going for years with that, Peter.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure out when it started, but now I know that
I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that late 40s, early 50s it was going,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you have a parade down Main Street, just like we do now?
Yeah, not to the extent that they have now, but, yeah, they used to have the Fireman's Parade on Thursday nights, and,
Okay.
everything is, that format hasn't changed a lot over the years. You used to have the Kiddies Parade.
Yep,
Yep.
they still do.
I made a couple of bucks over a couple of different years on, my entries that my mother rigged up for me.
Really? So you won the costume contest?
One of them, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Couple of them, yeah. My mother was very creative, and we had some kind of an Indian headdress with the multicolored feathers, a typical tourist thing that you would buy. She took my tricycle and with construction paper or cardboard or something, made a canoe. And I sat and rode my tricycle so it looked like I was riding down on a canoe with
Really?
this crazy headdress on
That's
and everything
neat.
like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. I said years afterward, it used to be when we would go to the carnival, I would know 98% of the people there. Now when I go, I know 2% of the people
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Oh, yeah.
In fact, I'll be honest with you, I haven't even been to the carnival in I don't know how many years because it's so crowded.
It
really
is
is.
very crowded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know any of the Nagel boys? Nagels?
I'm sorry.
Tom Nagel, Dan Nagel.
I knew of them, sure.
Dan used to own the gas station here, that's
Yeah.
Tom Service.
Yeah.
How
And,
about,
Tom used to have a store down on North Avenue. I think
Yeah.
that's, yeah. You know what I remember
also
about
my
that?
wife's relatives.
What I remember about that is going in there and being able to buy double-ended lollipops. They had
That's neat.
the white stick, it looked like a barbell, you know,
Yep.
candy on both ends.
Okay, so just to go back 1 second, did they do fireworks at the,
Yeah.
on the, oh, they did, okay, so
Yep.
that's never changed, okay,
Yep.
all right.
Yep, they did.
Up by where Ridgecrest is,
Yeah, up by the school, you
Yes.
know, up in that area. Of course, back then, the school wasn't there yet
Right.
early on, but it was still an open enough field, and I think what they did was they probably mowed it, because I can remember
oh, okay,
having 3 or 4 fire trucks parked around there,
Okay.
you know, to make sure they didn't burn the whole town down.
okay,
And, oh yeah, used to be fun. Every once in a while, if you timed it just right, if you were on the Ferris wheel when the fireworks started, they stopped the Ferris wheel,
yes.
and you'd be up on the top and you could see the whole thing. It was really cool.
They still did that when I was little, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you really, I mean, I'm sure your memories in the carnival aren't a whole lot different than mine
okay,
because of the situation, even the little bit of gap that we have in
yeah,
ages.
yeah, a little bit. So that's, okay. So with Spry, did Spry look pretty much look the same? Were the tennis courts there and the
Yeah.
fields and all that stuff, so nothing really changed there?
Well, of course, it's a whole lot different now. I mean, they've added
Oh,
on
yeah.
so much more and everything. But yeah,
Okay.
the south wing went out in the kindergarten, 1-story kindergarten on one end.
Okay,
Tennis courts are out in front of that. The football field was out towards Sherwood,
Okay.
over in that area. And the baseball diamonds and stuff were in between that.
okay,
Bus garage and everything was right in there. Bus garage and the industrial arts buildings were all one.
okay.
Separate building, had to come out of school, down a set of steps and down the sidewalk and into that building for
Yep.
that kind of
We
stuff.
did the same thing, yep.
So, yeah, it was a good time. It really was. I can't imagine, I just can't imagine growing up anyplace else. Of course, I don't have any reason to have to imagine it because I did, but, you know, I look back, there's nothing I would change. Not a thing. Not a thing.
It's, you know, how old are you, 45?
What is it, 47?
You're 47, and I'm 68, so I think that in the early 50s, you know, maybe early 60s, it was all Leave It to Beaver type of life.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
And,
Well,
you know,
my mom didn't wear high
everybody
heels,
always
but-
did the same thing. You eat at 5 o'clock, you know, your father whistles for you, you know, and
Yeah.
mom stayed at home and
Did your mom stay at home most of the
Yeah.
time, or did she, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
She worked later in her life. She worked for, actually, when I was about a sophomore or so in high school, she worked for Jerry Murr's Insurance.
Oh,
And they were right here off the end of Lapham Park on the other side, small place there. And then when Jerry built his new, and Jerry's wife Sally and my sister were very close friends, and they all grew up together and like that. When Jerry built his house up on the extension of Curtis Park, he added the office on the one side, and so when I was older, I would go up and pick her up, so she didn't have to walk home and like that, you know.
the extension of Kircher Park. So
No.
Curtis Park.
Curtis Park.
Curtis. So that would
Curtis
be,
Park,
That is where it comes.
when
That's
you
where
went
it
up-
comes in. It goes
Yeah,
straight.
you go up and then it bends around.
Yes.
It stopped right there initially.
Ah, okay. All
Just a
right.
little short stub road.
Yeah. Okay, that goes back to that larger.
Just enough for the church, really.
Does that go? That goes up to the larger house that's there now. Is that where they?
Yeah.
Is that where they were?
Well, up around from there.
Okay, got it. All right.
When Chance built all that new
Okay.
stuff in there.
All right.
You know.
Yep. Okay.
So yeah, that was a big change, obviously, to us, and even before that, the Pontiac, Mohawk, Iroquois Street, all that up. I guess probably using what's derogatory terms now, but it always used to be either the Indian Village or Teepee Town, one of the two. You know.
Yep.
When that was built, that was a pretty significant difference.
Yeah.
So yeah. Boy, you're pulling stuff out I haven't thought about in a long time.
Military service?
Didn't have to. I have a hearing impairment that they finally figured out was a somewhat of a birth defect like kind of thing. And in 1965, I got a letter from Uncle Sam that said, "Come and take a physical for classification." And about this time, my wife and I were dating, and we were talking pretty seriously about getting married and so on. Her father was a career Army guy. He served during World War II over in Germany and like that. And when he got out of there, he went into the National Guard and spent 35 years in the Guard.
Wow.
So when I got the letter, I called him. He says, "I'll call you back. You have to know this guy." He was like just a little over 5 feet tall, and they used to be at the Main Street Armory there near Goodman. If he was in the basement, you could hear him on the top floor. He was just a typical top sergeant type of guy.
Oh.
You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I called him. He said, "I'll call you right back." So he talked to the medical guy there at the well, it was the 209th at that time, field artillery. And he said, "Well, get a letter from your ear, nose, and throat specialist and come down here on Monday night." And so I went down, and he read the letter over, and he says, "I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do our physical thing here. I'm going to test you on everything but your hearing. And go to Buffalo, get the draft classification. If they decide that your hearing is okay, we'll take you right in." And he says, "I don't think you're going to pass it, so I don't want to give you the hearing test here, because if we fail you, then you can't come into the Guard." So anyway, long story short, went to Buffalo, took a very advanced hearing test there, and they gave me what they called back then a 1Y. Not a 4F, a 1Y. It meant that I could be drafted for service in the case of declared war or national emergency. So, no, I never had to serve in the military. Knowing what I know now, obviously, you were in the same boat, Vietnam, and
I
like
would
that.
think, yeah.
I have a number of friends that were over there. Three of them. One of the guys that used to skate with, well, a couple of the guys that used to skate with us all the time are lost their lives over there. So it was a 60s time. You know, if I had to go, I would have gone. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't want to say elated about not going, but certainly my architectural career was starting to move off better. We were talking about getting married. The set of circumstances and everything were there that I've always had an interest in the military. You know that. I mean, the stuff I've done
Yes.
researching the Civil War here in Webster and going on with some other things and everything like that.
When were you and your wife married?
June 18th, 1966.
Okay.
I always tell people I got my very first new car was a 1966 Chevy El Camino.
Oh, I remember that. So
Remember the Camino? The
Yeah.
Camino was they took the Chevelle and took the back of it off, made it a pickup truck.
Oh,
And I was racing. I was racing heavy duty racing carts all over the state at that point in time and like that. And so that was the beneficial thing. But I always think, somebody asked me, when did you get married? I said, let's see, May 18th, 1966, I got my new truck, and we got married a month later.
Yeah, that was the most important thing.
And then I duck.
if she's around.
I don't do that anymore.
Did you guys have children?
Yeah, two.
Two. Okay. All right.
Marie, you were in marching band with at least one of them.
Okay.
I think Marie.
Okay.
And of course, my son TC was in there too.
Okay.
Yeah, we spent 9 years of Saturday nights running all over this area, following the band around.
Yeah.
You know how that goes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. The band. Then the band when it started out was different than it is now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, my daughter went in, I think a couple of years after they stopped calling it, from the Sweater Band, the original one.
Yeah. The one that started at Spry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know because I was in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because I remember you and your bass guitar.
Yeah. But I played before that. I played cymbals, the drums.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, Marie played clarinet, except for her last year, she went into color guard.
Okay.
And TC was always low brass, mostly trombone, but he was one of the first one when they got the sousaphones. He was one of the first guys on the sousaphones.
Okay.
And he played a baritone 1 year or two. And the rest of the time he was on the trombone.
Where did they go to school?
RL.
They went to RL.
Well, actually, the way it broke out at that time, they went to Schrader for junior high and RL for senior high.
Okay.
It was that interim
Yep. Me too.
thing.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, they both graduated from RL.
Okay. Is that when RL was Webster High School again?
Yeah,
Because when I was there was no other high school. That was the only high school. So I actually graduated from Webster High School.
okay, yeah.
So maybe they did too.
Yeah, I think probably.
Okay.
I can remember going to the first architectural firm that I really worked for, did a lot of school work. And we were going to parents' night for the very first time for my daughter up at Schrader. And my wife says, "Do you think you can find your way around that building?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so," because I detailed about 75% of it.
Did you?
I lived with the drawings for that building for probably a year and a half.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Never got to see it till my kids went to school. Because while it was being built, I had moved on to another firm and like that, you know.
Do you think there's any particular the biggest changes you've seen in Webster over the time you've been here, since the time you were little till now? Like, what are the biggest changes you've seen? Are there things that stick out in your head, or is
Well, Xerox, obviously.
okay? It was little when you were here. What was it like when you were young?
Well-
Xerox was. What was it like?
Another story that goes to my building inspection days. A rather irate resident came in one day, and I did fairly well, but as we got into it farther, my demeanor started to slip a little bit, I guess we should say, or whatever. And he kept saying, "I've lived in Webster a long time." Kept saying that, you know. And I said to him, "Let me ask you something. You work at Xerox?" He says, "Yes, I do." I said, "I used to hunt where you work. So don't talk to me about
Right.
living in Webster for a long time."
Right.
You know. But that was basically it. Like I said, once we got to Phillips Road, along the railroad tracks. We could drop off any place and walk north, and you didn't have to contend with anything until you got almost to Lake Road. Maybe
Wow.
Schlegel Road, but that was it.
Okay.
That was it. It was wide open from all the way there, all the way down to Wayne County.
Okay. And then,
So
and
when
then as
they,
time went along, you
of course,
built-
off they went,
Yes.
you know. Of course, the schools, we just talked about that, they've expanded tremendously.
Did you ever have to do any inspections down at Xerox?
No, no. The school stuff was always handled through the state education department.
Okay.
We didn't even have the authority to issue them a permit. It
Okay.
had to come from the state,
So what
so.
about Xerox? Were you down there at all?
No, because Xerox was the village.
Ah.
Yeah,
So that fell on, first Tom Breyer and of course now Will Barham.
Okay.
There are a couple of buildings that are in the town, but they were never anything that they did any work with that we had to inspect, so no, I didn't have anything to do with that.
Did you ever work with Tom Breyer on things? Did you guys
Oh, yeah.
talk back and forth? Or did you?
Yeah, Tom and I were very good friends.
Really? Okay.
Oh,
All right.
yeah. One of the, well, only because I did architectural projects around the village here and stuff like that. And it got to be that if somebody needed something, Tom would say, call this guy and tell him what you need. Because
Okay.
he knew that I knew enough about the codes. For instance, when Zaz's was first going in over here on West Main Street, and Pat, I can't think what his last name was, now had the gym up on the second floor.
Oh.
We had to figure out a way to get a second stairway out of there. And so I worked with that, the revamping of the style shop with Dr. Salmonen when he moved his offices in there, and you know, several smaller projects. But yeah, Tom and I were real good friends.
Okay.
Because he knew I knew the code, and he didn't have to worry about it so much.
Yes, of course.
It's kind of like what's happening right now with
Yeah.
projects that I work on.
So do you think the two codes were relatively the same?
Oh, no, worlds apart.
Really? Okay.
Worlds
Okay.
apart.
All right.
Absolutely. You know, when I first was working with the town thing, we had a code book that was probably about couple of inches thick and a half sheet type thing. Now there are something like 8 separate books and a separate binder with just New York enhancements in it.
Wow.
So it's just gone crazy. And the village, well, of course, the village uses the same code now, you know. But yeah, it went from a little pocketbook like kind of thing to a half a library now.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's getting tougher all the time.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
it's getting tougher to decipher it all the time.
Boy.
So, well, we have 2 questions at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of them is, what is the most important lessons you've learned in life?
Oh my God.
We could end like that. How's that? It's a very broad one.
Keep my mouth shut. I haven't learned it well, but
When did you become president of the museum? Before we end, just why don't we talk about that for a second? How did you get involved in the museum?
well, I got involved in the museum when I did the research on the Civil War soldiers that were buried in
Okay.
the 5 cemeteries here. I thought it was of enough interest. I got the original papers from Dick Basing, and I thought it was unique enough that the historian, then Lynn, and the museum. So I put together 2 books with that. Now, I knew Bill Sawkey very well when that was president here.
Yep.
Well, in fact, him and Henry Quiaba and all those, because they were all at the town hall
That's right.
with me, you know.
Yep.
So anyway, I called Bill and I said, I'd like to bring him with. Well, we got a board meeting on Wednesday night. Why don't you bring it over then? And I had a cousin, Bev, well, maiden name Pellett, obviously, who had been on the board and unfortunately had passed away from cancer. So I bought the books in, and we got to talking about it and everything like that. And he said, why don't you come back and maybe you'd be interested in being a board member? So I said, yeah, fine, okay. So I came on the board just as a person at that point. And Bill said to me, we had, as vice president at the time was Laddie Birch.
Yeah, some good guy.
Laddie was a
He
wonderful
was.
person.
He was.
The problem is he was a World War II vet, starting a little bit of Alzheimer's and so on. And Bill said, and his wife wanted him to step down too. So, driving at night, that kind of
Yep.
thing. So he said, if I can convince Laddie to step down, will you take over as vice president? Then you can learn the job while I'm here, and then when I get ready to step down, you'll be able to move right in. So, oh yeah, sure, okay. And then, what was it? Less than a year later, Bill passed away,
Unexpectedly, yeah.
and the museum landed here.
Okay, got it, all right.
But I don't regret
That's
it.
a good story.
I regret the circumstances that put me into it, but yeah, this is places near and dear to me. I mean, you go around, we talked about this before. I mean, I see a Wabaco sign, I see Whitmer's store over here, Bob Hawley's desk, this, that, and it's stuff that I just grew up around, and it's just part of me. So I think about it every time I come in.
Should we still ask about the lessons in life thing?
Lessons in life.
So be
Lessons in life.
general. Like if you're talking to someone, what would you say are the biggest lessons you've learned in life?
Oh my gosh.
I like to keep your mouth shut one.
We should ask them about the Baptist church too. Have you gone to the Baptist church for a long time?
Fourth generation there.
See, we have to. All right, give us another minute. So you're fourth generation at the Baptist church. Really? Okay. Wow.
My great-grandparents, my grandparents, my parents, and me.
Okay.
They were a little better at it than I am, but my mother was a very avid churchgoer.
Okay. Did she walk to church?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because Dad didn't go
Okay.
that much. And I went when I was in Sunday school and like that. Quick funny story that you'd appreciate, especially this time of year. Mom never went to church on Christmas or Easter
Too much of a crowd.
because she says that's when all the heathens go.
Yeah, that's right. And it still stands
It
true
does.
today.
There's the most attendance on those days. I'll tell you
Yeah.
right now. Yeah. Yeah.
But oh yeah, yeah. I haven't been a steady goer, but yeah, we've been.
Well, you've been there. I've been there with Steve there.
Oh,
So I'm
yeah.
not a steady goer myself. So
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
No, I think back. I mean, I like Neva Hoffmeyer and some of those people. I've known them all my life, and that stretch of people is rapidly going away.
Oh yes, I know.
Which a lot of them. Lessons in life that I learned is the greatest thing that you can do is grow up in a small town.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I would say that because you learn things on a first-hand basis from people who have done it, and it's just not like the big city type of thing. I know a lot of things that I know because of people that I knew growing up here in Webster. How to do certain things, where to go for certain things, what to do with this or that, and so on and so forth. So there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that. And yeah, it may be the Leave It to Beaver type of thing, but generally,
That was
yeah, it's
idealistic life was then.
that, and I think sometimes you gotta put aside what you should be doing to do what you wanna do. That can, sometimes you luck out like me. Even though I wasn't good enough to be a commercial artist, I was able to get into the edges of that, but still be able to use mechanical things to do it, That's again, I told my wife when I was gonna take my exams, I said, if I don't pass these, I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm gonna do, because I'm not gonna stick around in this. I had a guy that I worked with, the old exam was 7 parts. And if you passed 4 out of the 7, then all you had to do was retake the ones that you didn't pass. If you didn't pass 4 out of 7, or you didn't pass the other parts within a couple, 3 years, you had to start all over again.
Oh.
This guy was a wizard. He was a wonderful architect, couldn't take tests for anything. He probably passed every part of that exam at least twice, some of them 3 times, never in the right sequence to get his license,
Oh,
and ended up dying of cancer.
oh,
And I said, I am not gonna go in that direction.
Right.
So, but, yeah, I think that's the lesson in life that I learned is the small town place is the greatest thing to come out of. Yeah. All right.
All right.
wonderful.